Okay, good afternoon to the audience and to everybody who's attending online. On behalf of SIOP Europe, I would like to welcome you all to our today's meeting. We will have two panels, but at first I would like to give some introductory words. So the fact that we as pediatric oncologists are invited to celebrate the ICCD on the World Cancer Day, which is today, emphasizes the place of childhood cancer in the heart of EU politics. So thank you so much for inviting us. On behalf of childhood cancer patients and their families and the healthcare professionals in Europe fighting for the children each day, and on behalf of SIOP Europe, I would like to thank MEP Andras Kulja for hosting this event. The meeting will put the spotlight on inequalities in outcome of childhood cancer in the EU. We still face a north-south and a west-east difference in outcome. Europe must stand together in many fields, and at first in areas that concern our future and our children. Pediatric oncologists work since decades together, united as one European team, introducing cross-border academia-initiated clinical trials and managed to enormous advancements in the field. However, disparities in access to care and research still exist across Europe, unjustly affecting young patients' survival and quality of life. It's about lack of infrastructure and support to open such IITs in some countries. Here, and a new EU initiative may lower the financial burden. Furthermore, innovative therapies such as CAR T-cell therapy or specialized local treatments remain out of reach for many due to logistical and financial barriers. Today, we will explore how EU policymakers and healthcare professionals can work together to overcome these challenges and build a future where all children with cancer can access the care and research they need, regardless of where they were born or live. And I hand over to Anita.
Thank you, Uta. I'm very happy to be back in this EU Parliament for another important event. And good afternoon to all you are in this room and who are participating virtually. I particularly thank the members of the Parliament and representatives of the European Commission who have joined us today. As many of you know, and Uta already mentioned, Childhood Cancer Awareness Day falls on the 15th of February. This year's event at the European Parliament happily coincides with World Cancer Day, celebrated on the 4th of February today, emphasizing the place of childhood cancer at the heart of cancer policies. For us at CCI Europe, representing parents, patients and survivors, today's event is a very important occasion. For over 15 years, we have been advocating for against inequalities, high-quality health care for young cancer patients across Europe, and we will continue to push for these vital changes. Therefore, we are very grateful and optimistic that we can make a difference with this event today, which highlights the pressing need of cross-border care and research. On one hand, we need more and better and stronger collaboration supported by EU policies, and on the other hand, we must turn the spotlight on the current challenges in cross-border care and research in pediatric oncology in order to advance multi-stakeholder collaboration. Only through this approach we can begin to address the systematic inequalities that exist and ultimately help the authorities who bear the responsibility for these issues. This being said, I would like to leave you with a quote from the MEP Thomas Sokol. He is not here yet, but nevertheless, he said something very important. There is no higher priority in healthcare than ensuring that children with cancer receive the treatment they need. To facilitate cross-border access to care for pediatric oncology patients, we need to revise the cross-border healthcare directive. In addition, we must ensure that patients have the right to request a second opinion from specialists in other member states so that they can access best possible care available anywhere in the EU. Yes, thank you for the opening words that I could put here, and I hand over to Uta again.
Okay, thank you, Anita. So we have a panel discussion, and the panel discussion will consist of two parts. And the panel discussion is about cross-border access to care, research and training to reduce these inequalities for children and adolescents with cancer. And the first panel is cross-border access to high-quality care, and the moderator will be Ruth Ladenstein, who is really one of the pioneers addressing the needs of childhood cancer in all European countries, and is the head of the ERN PETCAN that is really strongly working on this and already achieved a lot of milestones and goals, and she will be the moderator of the panel. And Delphine Heeren, a patient advocate of the KIK Cancer CEO and founder, and a CCI Europe committee member, will be part of the panel, as is Hanna Horka from the DG Santé, European Commission, a policy officer, and Vlad Vasil Wojciescu, and MEP Andriukaitis from Lithuania, who will participate online as far as I'm informed. So we are happy to invite the first panel.
So I think we are ready and can start and take best use of the time. Good afternoon, also from my side. We are thrilled about this event today and the high audience that we have from very high-level speakers overall, and the representation of patient advocates, extremely important. So I would like to get the slide started, because I think what we want to embrace here is really the current situation of legislation in Europe. We were thankfully given two very important legislation. On the one hand, a regulation that regulates the health insurance and security reimbursements, and that was then followed a number of years later by the European Directive of Cross-Border Healthcare. And as an ERN coordinator, we are extremely indebted for this great initiative, and I will demonstrate you shortly which way we have come to give you a good feeling where we stand today. I think when one looks into these two legislations, there is a certain tension there, how to access actually cross-border healthcare and under which legislation what is needed. we have, there is in the so-called S2 regulation, the process of prior authorization. And this, I think we depicted, we will come back to this, some areas of possible improvements with better interaction, whereas the directive very clearly guides us to a prior authorization process, but in cases where we do need highly specialized treatments, etc. The granting of access is different in the two legislations because it depends what is included in your insurance package and also where you are coming from. So there is quite a difference also in view of telemedicine and reimbursement schedules. If there's full reimbursement, including travel and housing costs, or how much there is dependency on the national legislation by member states. What is very clear in both legislation, and this will be the second panel, that research and access to innovation is not covered in neither. And we have in the directive this, specifications towards the rare disease community, and pediatric cancer is one of it. And whereas the regulation is much broader, dealing with manifold complexities in cross-border situations, and a lot of improvements have been achieved. So the S2 form is really the instrument run through the regulation, and we will come back to that. So a few slides about ERN PET-CAN to remind us where we are coming from. I think the biggest achievement in this network is that we have coverage in all member states. And this is very important to really enable the cross-border healthcare. So 90 members, hospital, institution, healthcare providers that enable to interact together. Next. Very importantly, and from early days on, the close interaction with Childhood Cancer International Europe, which has built up an enormous network of national contact points of parent organization, which is extremely important to enable the patient interest in the best manner. Next. This just gives you our annual monitoring data collection, and this refers only to the 90 institutions that are monitored within ERN PET-CAN. And you see in blue the numbers of new pediatric cancer patients, and in yellow the bars of the cross-border referrals. Overall activities have been increased in the later years. Next one. What I want to point out, it was very important for the ERNs that we were able to change to a multi-beneficiary grant. And what we did really is to create 13 hubs of coordination in various member states, which reflect the headquarters, so to say, of the clinical trial groups, with all the experts across the full spectrum of pediatric cancers. What we don't see yet, and this is a suggestion, is that these ERN experts have currently little or no official interaction with the member state national contact points, so there is room for improvement, and we will discuss this later. The list is the list of institutions, next one, and what I briefly want to point out in this rather go to the next one, please. With this colorful slide, it again points out the headquarters on the right side, and that it embraces really all the indications, so the knowledge is there to give advice wherever the need comes from. Next. Very important what ERN PET-CAN achieved with help of the experts in the clinical trial groups, European standard clinical practice guidelines, because inherent to them are care pathways, which is very important to steer the processes, and it goes around all the indications, and there are more to come. So these are extremely important reference documents to set standards of care and for treatment and diagnosis. Next. I think one of the major contributions in 2025 by EAN PETCAN with all the experts in the field is a contribution to better interoperability. And we launched a project together with Orphanet to translate the International Childhood Cancer Code into Orphanet coding. And this will indeed facilitate manifold interactions and interoperabilities on the large run. A huge work where the contributions will be given through the high-level experts, but also younger members of the SIOP Europe Society working together. Next. This is my last one. Twinning is key, not to forget. The two colors you see with the bluish-greenish one on the one side is usually where doctors are coming from that are sent to this pinkish, violet, purple-colored countries for learning. This is just a snapshot of the activity in 24-25, and there are many, many educational events driven through SIOP Europe and also through EAN PETCAN. So with this, I want to close. It's just to give you a little bit of an impression where we go and where we are coming from. And I'm more than happy now to hand over to Delphine for her contributions.
Thank you very much, Ruth, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Many of you already know me, but I'm the mother of 4 young men, one of whom was diagnosed with cancer 11.5 years ago. I think there's another problem. Yes, can you, for those participating online, would you please kindly mute? Or can we mute the participants from the... Sure.
We are flexible. Thank you, Delphine. We will certainly come back to you in a minute. And since we are very honored that we have Member of Parliament Andriukaitis present online. Hello, we have met previously in the inauguration of the EANs. I'm very pleased that you are back. And the question that we would like to address to you is really on the development on the EANs, but specifically, what are your thoughts on possible improvement in terms of the legislation, given all your important previous roles in your political life?
Thank you so much. Sorry being a little bit late. And I am a little bit far from Brussels, but I know that I can only now to deliver my speech based on my, experience. And I remember 2017 years when we launched European Reference Network in Vilnius, and now we are, in better situation. But although European Reference Networks are a useful tool for improving care for patients with rare diseases and rare cancers, they are not functioning effectively as they should. Despite the European Reference Network's potential to facilitate cross-border collaboration, there are many legal obstacles at member states level, not at EU level. The lack of financial support also at member states level. The lack of cooperation and political will also at member states level. All this has prevented them from providing many patients with access to the specialized expertise and treatment options they need. As a result, significant challenges remain. And we still struggle to ensure that every patient, in particular every child across Europe, receives the care they truly deserve. The European Reference Network is a pan-European initiative focused on rare cancers and rare diseases and addressing these challenges but it requires collective efforts. No single country can tackle this issue being alone. Long diagnostic processes, which can last 5-6 years till now, create significant challenges for individuals with rare diseases, and many patients are unable to receive a timely diagnosis, and a large number of national rare disease plans or strategies till now are obsolete, and they need to be updated, adopted, or replaced. This is because many existing plans are either ineffective or overly formal, placing a considerable burden on European reference network coordinators and threatening the overall manageability of European reference network. In many countries, clinical guidelines and care pathways for rare cancers and rare diseases are still missing. Financial constraints, uneven resource allocation, different regulations, and varying levels of attention given to rare diseases create substantial gaps in access to treatment across member states. Even when national plans are in place, they are often more theoretical than practical, which makes it difficult for patients to receive the care they need. Currently, only about 6% of patients have a need for specific treatment. Pharmaceutical companies mainly focus on well-known rare diseases, leaving many others without treatment options. The vast majority of rare diseases are excluded from clinical research, and treatment remains unaffordable in many countries. Another significant issue is the inequality among member states. Some countries remain reluctant to offer the necessary administrative, legal, or financial support to European reference network. A lack of coherent policies across member states remain a major barrier. Additionally, differences in funding for rare disease treatment hinder the full implementation of the directive on patients' rights in cross-border healthcare and the regulation on the coordination of social security system. It was just mentioned. These financial disparities further limit the potential for cooperation. Also, European reference networks have created avenues for cooperation. The differences in healthcare systems, languages, regulations between countries can complicate coordination. Simplifying administrative processes, developing standardized treatment protocols, and making greater use of digital tools such as telemedicine could significantly reduce these barriers. By doing so, we could ensure that healthcare providers, whether in one country or another, can more easily share expertise and treatment options for children with cancer, no matter where they are located in Europe. But they need to be remunerated for their extraordinary expertise, consulting patients from other countries. But still, it do not exist. Another critical issue we must confront is funding and research allocation. While European reference networks do receive support from the European Commission, the reality is that additional funding is often necessary to support research, patient care, and training, especially in lower-income EU countries. This is particularly crucial in pediatric oncology, where specialized treatments and personalized care are paramount. Securing sustainable funding from both European Union and national sources is essential. This would allow all countries, regardless of their economic status, to contribute to and benefit from European reference networks, ensuring equitable access to life-saving treatments for children across Europe. A related challenge is the integration of European reference networks into national healthcare systems. Differences in medical policies or national priorities can create resistance to adopting cross-border solutions. To overcome this, it is vital to work closely with national healthcare authorities to develop framework that integrate European reference networks into national health strategies. This collaboration would allow specialized pediatric oncology teams to operate more effectively within their local healthcare systems, offering better care to children no matter where they live. Additionally, access to European reference network services remain unequal, particularly for patients in remote and underserved regions. And once again, telemedicine can help here much. stemming from the Draghi report that identified rare diseases as a fast-growing area of pharmaceutical research where the EU could regain the competitive advantage that has been lost to other regions in the world, it is time to use European reference networks as existing infrastructure which can help us to develop an excellent ecosystem for the European Union, and of course to introduce proposed in letter report proposed fifth freedom of research and investment in the EU. The reform of the European Union's pharmaceutical sector is a milestone for European Health Union and a crucial step to improve the competitiveness of the sector and keep up to the pace of technology. Even though this proposed legislation addresses some of the challenges hindering the research and development of therapies for rare diseases, there is a need to address more holistically the critical needs of patients with rare diseases. We need to establish a pan-European ecosystem based on European reference networks, facilitating cross-country, multi-stakeholder and public-private cooperation, inviting pharmaceutical companies and university hospitals investing in orphan medicines development. Based on letter report, we need to invite EU policymakers and key stakeholders from the healthcare professionals and patient communities to discuss challenges and solutions to create an infrastructure based on European reference networks for research and innovation that support the development, approval and access to innovative therapies for rare diseases in the EU. The time is to build such ecosystem based on European reference networks is now. Let us start those discussions and that facilitate our efforts to use opportunities which we have in our hands. Thank you.
I don't know if I repeat. So thank you very much for all your enthusiasm and really strong will to support the improvement of structures. I think we have come quite a way, and we all see that there is a need to push stronger. We have these problems with our European Union, with the health competency in health in each member state, and really to facilitate the crosstalk and to create real equity across Europe. It is a challenge, and thank you for supporting us strongly in this endeavor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I hand over now. Thank you, Delphine, for having been patient.
No worries.
Please come back and share your insights.
So I say thank you at the end of my speech when I get to finish it this time. So I am the mother of 4 young men, one of whom was diagnosed with cancer 11.5 years ago. He passed away last August because there was no curative treatment that existed for his type of cancer. And yet, while he was with us, we did everything we could to keep him with us. And as it should for all rare and complex diseases, his treatment journey extended beyond Europe. And so every step of the way, we fought for the best care. And in 2019, for instance, when he relapsed for the second time with a metastasis on the lung, he didn't want to undergo chemotherapy again. And so his oncologist recommended surgery. She initially suggested performing the surgery in her hospital. But after researching, we, his parents, found out that France offered better expertise for the specific intervention that he needed. Raphael's doctor was open to our suggestion, and she applied for an S2 form to cover the procedure abroad. It was seamless and easy. But not all families have this option. Some doctors prefer to keep their patients in-house to build expertise. And under the current system, it is solely the doctor's decision to apply for an S2 form. Families should not have to work hard to convince their doctor to allow treatments elsewhere because they might fear to jeopardize their child's care. We must ensure that every family can discuss the possibility of treatment abroad with a neutral third-party healthcare professional if it's needed. Traveling abroad is a guarantee sometimes for better treatments, but it can entail financial and emotional burden for families. Raphael's stay in Paris for a surgery was short, yet only my train ticket was reimbursed by Belgian Social Security. His father's was not. It was unthinkable for us that he would miss such a crucial moment in his treatment, so we covered the cost ourselves. Other families face even greater challenges. Some children must stay abroad for months, even years. But most member states fail to recognize that sick children need both their parents at their bedsides and sometimes also of their siblings for their mental well-being. For parents, caring alone for a child who is sick is unbearable. It's a 24/7 duty. Financial support should allow parents to share the burden, not for one parent only to care everything on their own. When the treatment abroad lasts longer than a couple of months, it can become a bureaucratic nightmare. A young Polish girl that we discussed with had to be treated in Austria for a medulloblastoma, a treatment that lasts 2 years. To comply with the Austrian regulations, after 4 months, she was mandated to register her domicile in Austria, so to be registered as a resident. But doing so meant losing social benefits in Poland, because you have to reside in Poland to have access to those benefits. But you cannot reside in Austria and apply for social benefits. So she ended up in a nightmarish catch-up 22. No family with fighting cancer should also have to fight bureaucracy on top of everything. And this is why cross-border health matters. It has helped so many patients, but truly supporting pediatric cancer families, we need urgent improvements. Travel costs should be covered for the whole family, for the well-being of everyone. Psychosocial support should be included, and emotional and administrative assistance should be taken care of. You can't be treated for cancer and, spend hours on the line with social security services. And S2 forms should not only rely on the will of the treating physician. Families should have access to someone who can intervene for them should that be necessary. Let's make those changes so that more children with cancer can access the best care. So now I can say thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Delphine, for this very clear insight in a patient and family journey. And I hand now over to Hannah Harker, who joined us as a policy officer in DG Santé. And we would be very interested in some insights on the latest reports that the Commission has driven, and what you concluded on the levels of potential improvements.
Many thanks, Ruth. Thank you very much for inviting me. I would like to, I'm from the unit which is dealing with European Reference Network, rare diseases, and part of it is also a team dealing with the Cross-Border Healthcare Directive. The second regulation, Social Security regulation, is managed by our colleagues in DG Employment, so just for the clarifications. So, indeed, the Cross-Border Healthcare Directive, which is already since a while in place, since 2011, it allows or gives rights to the patients to have a treatment with or without the prior authorization in other member states. And it also gave kind of substance to a possibility to create the European Reference Network, which is an idea that the patients doesn't need to travel, but it's rather the knowledge which travels. So the networks are not actually the original idea was not to establish them for the treatment. It was rather for the consultation, for the better diagnosis, for the high-level expertise, which should be exchanged between the European experts. So the directive, there was an evaluation report published in 2022. The results are that the directive, the implementation of the directive is moderately effective in the objective to facilitate the safe and high-quality care in other member states. Rising or the awareness about the patient's rights is relatively low, so this is something which needs to be improved. There is benefits of the recognition of the prescription that has been highlighted as an important point. As I said, the substantial impact has been highlighted in establishment of the European Reference Network. So this is the evaluation report of the Cross-Border Healthcare Directive published in 2022. As mentioned, we in the Commission now take seriously the results, and we are organizing a series of workshops in the member states, often in the cross-border regions, when we raise the awareness about the rights of the patients. On the websites of the Commission have been published new guidebooks, new leaflets, new manuals for the patients in all languages. We will continue in this. Also raising awareness that each member state has a focal point, cross-border healthcare focal point, which is the contact point for the patients, that all is needs to be improved. Now within the ERNs, so we are 2017, they were founded in the 8th years of the functioning of the ERNs. PETCAN, together with other 3 ERNs, which are targeted on cancers, are very successful. We have, of course, 24 ERNs altogether, so on the rare conditions and very complex conditions, so they are really very much different. We provide as a Commission the grants to support the coordination of the ERNs, but as it has been mentioned, indeed, there is now a strong need to integrate the European reference networks into the national healthcare systems. This is something which has been already mentioned by my ex-Commissioner Andriukaitis, because we are aware that often the awareness about the ERNs and about the system is not always very high in all member states, that the hospitals don't support enough the networks. I don't say that all of them, but it of course varies, but it's really important that they get support, also financial, human resource support from the member states, because our European grants don't cover the work of the medical doctors. So we are really supporting the coordination, but we expect that this is a joint process with the member states, and that's why we have launched a joint action Jardin, which was launched last year. It's a 3 years project on integration of ERNs into the national healthcare systems. I will don't want to go into the details. They have a nice website where they put all the deliverables as they will come. But the idea is indeed to involve the member states ways to easy the pathways, the diagnostic, the referral system, also for the undiagnosed patients, improvement of the data management, interoperability of the data, and actually support that the ERNs are integrated into the national strategies and the national action plans. So that was one of the key also conclusion of the ERN's evaluation, which is still ongoing. We have, it's a huge evaluation done by the independent evaluation body. First half of the ERNs, of the clinical centers. We have about 1,600 clinical centers in all member states and Norway. Half of them have been evaluated last year. This year there is a re-evaluation of those clinical centers which were identified that they need some improvement. So it's ongoing process. However, ERNs as such, not the clinical units, but the ERNs all have been evaluated as that they achieved their objectives, and that they are in achieved objectives in delivering the clinical guidelines through the clinical patients management system, the exchange of the information, the consultations, the expertise, and so on and so on. So this is in a way on one side, positive news. On the other hand, we are fully aware that this integration in the national systems needs to be improved, and that will be our work for the future years. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this review in brief, which I think we fully share the insights. Obviously, we hope through Jardin we will gain even more insights. But where we count on our politicians is really to support the dialogue on the multi-levels between member states and the healthcare levels, because it's about integration. And I may say so on behalf of academia, that a lot of our contributions are free time on top contributions after normal obligations in our own healthcare system. And this is in lack sometimes of sufficient professionals. And that's why sometimes not so well perceived. Yeah? So this general acceptance to have room, yeah, to create equity, I think to bring it to the ground and to fruition is really this major challenge that we are facing together. So we count on all on you. Our contributions are here, and we hope to build here a deeper integration into the healthcare system, as well as acceptance, overcoming the pitfalls that we currently see. I would like now to invite Mepva Lösku. Thank you very much for being here. You have lots of insights from your background and multiple levels. Being a previous health minister, you can give us the sight on how one can act in this role. You have been a patient advocate, so also know this side. So I would like to invite you to give us your insights, the complexities of reimbursement procedures, and actually really indeed to have this access to cross-border healthcare as envisaged in the legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I should begin by thank all of you, especially the health professionals and professional patient advocates around here that are investing their time and energy to help real patients every single day. I have some notes here, and I also took some notes from our inspirational speakers here. It is obviously an honor for me to speak to you today on this issue that is also my political urgency, my personal political urgency, and something deeply, deeply personal for me as well, and that's ensuring no child with cancer is denied life-saving care due to administrative, let's call it, complexity. And I also have a bit of a personal story here. I didn't send any presentation or photo, but I'll just show you one photo of a child called Marinusz. People called him Eigelb. That's the yellow part in the egg, because his color turned a bit yellow after the first round of chemotherapy. That's exactly, his birthday was supposed to be yesterday, and that the story is 10 years old. His father, who you saw in the picture, wrote me while I was not a politician, I was a banker in Vienna, living on Neubaugasse. That's exactly 12 minutes from AKH, from the biggest hospital there. He wrote me that his child doesn't stand a chance, and that they are looking for clinical trials or treatments that are available somewhere in the world. Funny enough, there was a treatment available in Vienna, so that's where I was leaving to enter the Romanian government end of 2015, and my apartment on Neubaugasse would be empty. And so the apartment became a home for him and his father for the next 3.5 years. And that was the only solution for a young boy in Romania to access treatment in Vienna. The insurance would cover the costs for the treatment as such, not for all the rest, for transportation, for lodging, for food, and so on. So the rest was covered by well-intended people, and this was also the beginning of one of my patient advocate project called Magic Home. So I do understand in practice the bureaucratic hurdles that are not just technicalities, but they mean delays in treatment, financial distress for families, and in some cases devastating the qualities in survival rates between countries or even between regions. We've already discussed about the cross-border healthcare directive and the S2 form, but coming back to the more general stuff, I think those two acts, those two pieces of legislation were some of the most generous political acts of the European Union. And what we need now is definitely, first and foremost, a totally different level of political commitment to go further. And I think we're pretty much in a storm geopolitically everywhere. But I think some planets are aligning themselves for us as well. And looking at the speakers today, you mentioned, I think for Kinesberger, you mentioned the Tomislav Sokol. I just had a meeting with him discussing exactly this issue. He's the coordinator of the biggest group here in the European Parliament. You had the SANT coordinator, so the coordinator for health in the newly fully fledged legislative committee here in the Parliament. You have Mr. Andriukaitis, who's not only the former commissioner but the coordinator for health of the second largest group here in the Parliament. I'm the coordinator for Renew, for the Liberal group here in the Parliament, and I've been in touch with leaders from other political parties. I think there's no one, literally no one, who would say no to a good plan. So I'm moderately optimistic that while health is still not a fully fledged European competence, that more people understand that we can't possibly talk about united Europe and about being Europeans if we can't help children with cancer. A couple of thousands of children, let's call that, with severe conditions. We also have tools, not only a fully fledged SANT committee, but we have an intergroup where childhood cancer is at the very center of the work that we're going to do there. It's an intergroup on cancer, childhood cancer, and rare diseases. I see Chiara there, so we're in touch pretty often. And there wouldn't have been an intergroup on cancer and rare diseases if SIOP wouldn't have been at the very center of it. We definitely need to push for a couple of things. One is clear guidelines when national insurance should cover ERN recommended treatments. We should also push for various instruments, ways and means, and that, in my view, needs still to be decided upon, need to be listed, on enhancing the ERNs and their cooperation, and in making the ERN not just a voluntary means, a voluntary instrument, but something that both both hospitals, doctors, and patients and national insurances take very seriously as something that is part, or not only of the European framework, but also of the national frameworks. For the assistance for non-medical costs, such as travel and accommodation, maybe we should set up a fund, a European fund. Maybe, at least as a pilot, we should do that. Maybe we should start from here before pushing it on, in lack of another word, pushing it on the member states. I guess it's easier to do something centrally than to negotiate with 27 member states. We need to show that this works. We need to show that the doctors, nurses, that the professionals and patients are behind it, and there's no way a politician will say no to us. I think there are other issues that we need to look at, such as the explore how we can support clinical trials and access to clinical trials. The boy I've just shown you was first part of he got the standard care treatment in Vienna, and then he was part of a clinical trial, and that helped him a lot for almost 3.5 years. Finally, the first barrier that we see in the own initiative reports that has evaluated the implementation of the cross-border healthcare directive, and I think one of the main barriers when we're talking about serious conditions is information, and also the capacity of families to decipher both medical stuff, medical information, but also administrative information. So we have to make sure, and this is again something where we can't possibly rely on 27 states and on their ability or willingness to do something. We need to do something centrally, probably definitely with the help of patients, advocates or families. We need to make sure that things are easier to understand for families in all over Europe who need to find their ways for their children. I'll stop here, and I'll say once again I'm very happy to be here, and I'm moderately optimistic that I would be optimistic if I'd be able to promise that within 12 months we're going to solve everything. But we have a setup here in Brussels, a pretty stable setup for the next 4.5 years. I think this is our chance, and I will make it my personal mission to push things forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the expressed commitment, for all your insights. And I think very much indeed we are looking forward to work together and create here a better setup and scenario for patient families and better outcomes. At that stage, I want to address very quickly Kulja, who just came to us. Thank you very much for being our host, and I will give you more room in the final closing, if this is okay, unless you want to address quickly yourself a brief welcome.
Thank you very much, and my apology for being late, but we had a very important discussion about the healthcare workforce shortages in Europe, and I think it's also connected to today's event, because we face these challenges all across the Europe, especially in the CE region, and we also must find solutions for these shortages, because without healthcare workers, we cannot ensure the proper care about our patients, including even the children, and that's why it is so important to have a SAN committee as a standing committee, as just Vlad mentioned. So now we can work together, and I try to be very brief. So thank you very much for being here, and I'm sorry that I was late a little bit.
Thank you very much for the welcome. And as we heard, we very much trust that the right plans converge towards the better with common efforts. I would like to briefly open the floor for burning questions. I think we can allow one or two. Gilles, please.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Andriukaitis mentioned that one option would be to integrate the European Reference Network in the national health system to make that work and with better support from the member states. How this would look like? I don't want to put you on spot, but I think it's important to understand.
Yeah, and it's not a answer for 1 minute. I don't have a solution which would be for 1 minute. Indeed, that's why we set up this joint action JARDA. Joint action means that we give money to the member states, so it's a cooperation of the official authorities of the member states. We are also very much involved in informing the ministries of health and competent authorities about every step which JARDA is doing. We also plan, for example, in March 19th, here in Brussels, there will be a meeting of the ERN's hospital managers together with the national authorities from the member states to talk actually about ERNs and how to better integrate them. So this joint action is for us a tool which we hope that it will be successful after its finalization to better integrate them. So the key is really that in the end we would expect that each member state has in their national rare disease strategies, because if not all, most of them have them, not totally up to date, but they exist in the member states, but that they are updated and that the ERNs are in their national strategies, so that they are part of the system. So that's our ultimate, or the ultimate goal of the JARDA. It's ambitious, so let's see how far we will get.
Be also an option?
Yeah, it is a complicated question, because at the EU level, legal entity, DG Santé is giving the money, so it's not so easy. And the answer would be it wouldn't solve all the problems. Just by giving the legal entity, it doesn't mean that the member states will work with the ERNs more, or that they will support them more. So this is not the golden solution, unfortunately.
No, there's no golden solution. They could do three things. One is they could reimburse second opinions. So if If a doctor in an ERN wants to get the opinion of somebody else, then the national insurance should pay for that. ERNs are generally not for the most common diseases, but on the contrary. So a second opinion might actually not be a bad idea, and you have there the best specialists. And this is doable. This is very different from country to country. And this is definitely easier to stomach for some than for others. But that's one thing. The second thing is the obligation to consult. So if you, as specialists, if SIOP says there are these 3 types of cancer where we know that we have the best specialists in very few parts of Europe, and for those types of cancer, we strongly recommend that there would be not only a second opinion, but I don't know, we can frame it as a tumor board or a specialized tumor board for something, for some of the diagnosis. They can definitely integrate that. And then the third thing is, if after such a consultation, if after such a tumor board, there is a decision by a committee, by an international committee, that treatment should be provided in a specialized center, and that this is the best chance for that child, then the member state should pay for that, with no further discussions. And this is not that difficult to implement, actually. It takes usually, it's not a law that you have to change. It's usually, you have to have the money somewhere. You need to fund either at the ministerial level, you can do it there, or with the national insurance. And otherwise, it's in Romania, it would be an order from the president of the national insurance, and that would be it.
Okay, thank you very much, because I think this is very well perceived by the ERNs and very much in line, because it refers to an empowerment of the networks, to play really a crucial role in second opinions, also getting closer with the national contact points so that we have the experts really on the right level to advise and not leave it only to a governmental structure to take decisions, but really bring the knowledge into the field and ideally also involve patient advocates in this process. So I think with this we could reach a big improvement.
May I say something?
Last comment, then we have to go into the second panel.
Yes.
Please.
Last comment, so Tomislav Sokol just entered, and it's an idea that he promotes, and we totally agree. Maybe we should have a fund, a European fund first, that would pay for those second opinions. If we show that it works, if we have the patients and their families and the medical societies behind that, they will have to do it.
Thank you very much. I think thank you for the contributions on the panel. Thank you for the discussants. And I may invite now the second panel speakers to come up here. This time we will shift a little bit gears in our focus. Hello, welcome. So we have focused on cross-border care conditions, and just to remember, in the legislative parts, we have a strong focus on facilitation to access of standard of care, but the ERNs, since they were founded, were fighting very much or discussing very much for the research part, because there's no good care if you leave research behind. And I think in the whole scope, what we understand in this research and access to innovation, this will now be part of our second panel discussion, how to enable this. I was asked to have a small shift in order of speakers, and so therefore I would like to invite Nicole Scobie, patient advocate, chair of Accelerate, CCI Europe and ITCC committee member, to start the second panel.
Thank you, Ruth. Research. When we talk about research, it feels very intangible. It's very hard to imagine how research and access to research has a direct impact on children with cancer today. And yet that is the reality in childhood cancer. My son was diagnosed with cancer when he was 4 years old, and he was treated on a clinical trial. And we were lucky because that clinical trial was available in our country. And we were even luckier because it worked, and he's cured, and he's 18 years old now. But that's not the case for everyone. As a patient advocate, since then, I've worked on many different projects, meetings like this, and one of them was in the ITCC Access to Innovation project. ITCC is Innovative Therapies for Children with Cancer, and it's a network of centers that run innovative clinical trials, so early clinical trials in Europe. And this group had a project called Patient Access to Innovation that evaluated how patients in member states access research cross-border. And it really highlighted the inequalities with access to research. And that's a problem for two reasons. First of all, because if we want to actually end up curing all children one day and reducing the toxicities, we have to make sure that every child's case counts, that every child matters, because cancer is rare. So we have to be studying every child. And I'd like to quote a parent whose child died of cancer, who once said, "The worst thing is knowing that all that was learned from your child's cancer is that the same treatments thrown against the same disease lead to the same results." So we need to make the research move faster, and to do that, we have to count every child. But the second reason that it's a problem is because of the very real cases of children not accessing potentially life-saving or life-lengthening treatments today. And those are very real situations. And for that, I'd like to talk about a fellow patient advocate whose daughter relapsed from her cancer a year or so ago, and whose medical team has identified on a European level a potential treatment for that child, but they have trouble accessing it because of insurance problems. And that should not be the reality for anyone. No parent who is fighting for their child's life should have to think about money. And to give you a very real example of this, I would like to invite Barbara Kolsul to come up and share her story with all of you.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Barbara Kolsul, and I have 3 children. My oldest daughter, Lotte, she's now 12 years old. And 5 years ago, she was first diagnosed with high-risk neuroblastoma, which is an aggressive type of childhood cancer. She had a quite intensive treatment during 1.5 years, and then she got into remission. And for 2.5 years, everything seemed fine, but unfortunately, last year in April, she relapsed. So again, she had to undergo very intensive treatments, including chemotherapy combined with immune therapy and radiation. And we were lucky, the treatment has effect. The cancer has already strongly been reduced. But we know that if we stop now the treatment, that the cancer will most certainly come back. So this means that a kind of consolidation treatment is very much needed at this moment. And we sought advice not only from our own oncologists, but also from several international experts in this specific type of cancer. And they all strongly recommend a CAR-T treatment, as this gives her the best chance that the cancer will not come back. In the hospital Bambino Gesù in Rome, a successful CAR-T for neuroblastoma has been developed. And in 2023, it has finalized the phase 1/2 clinical trial. In anticipation of a more extended phase 2 clinical trial, the hospital received a hospital exemption. This means that they can offer this treatment to children because there is a very high need and the results were very promising. Unfortunately, the treatment is only offered in Italy. So we will need to go to Italy for 2 months. And the cost is immense. It is well above 300,000 euros. In several European countries, including Italy, France, and Denmark, this treatment has already been reimbursed. We applied for an S2 form. 2 days later, we had already reimbursed. This means that this cost of 300,000 euros, we will need to pay it ourselves. This treatment gives our daughter by far the best chance of survival. So we decided to set up a crowdfunding. Setting up a crowdfunding means that we have to put our daughter, who is already suffering much and going through a very difficult time, we have to put her in the spotlight. And this really breaks my heart as a mother, that we have to do that. So it seems very unfair to me that within the European Union, some children have access to this treatment and others don't. It seems to me that the best available treatments should be available for all children in the EU. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for sharing this struggle with all our sympathies for you. And we will continue now our statements and ideas how to ensure access to research and to underpin the needs. And with this, I hand over to Gilles Vassal, very much known to many of you as SIOP policy lead and former ICCD president. Gilles, give us your insights.
Sure, thank you.
Scenarios.
Children can benefit from clinical trials. And even though it is named experimental, these are treatments that can be of benefit for children. And this is why what was in the very past, what called in France sans bénéfice individual, now is no longer true. Even in an early phase trial, patient can benefit. This is when access to clinical trial innovation is absolutely essential in the care of children with cancer. Second, the story is not an industry trial run to develop a medicine that may end up with a marketing authorization. This is an academic research run by researchers. Don't look yet at the slide. Thank you. An academic research run by academic trial where clearly the fund is not including any funding for traveling accommodation of any patient. So the issue is how to assure access to all children to relevant clinical trial, especially the early one, because they cannot be open in all the 385 centers in Europe. No, they cannot. So how we can assure access where clearly the funding for covering what was needed is not yet there. since the S2 from the regulation social security coordination that you showed on your first slide does not cover at all research. And I think this is one of the important changes that we need to see. This map is just showing as well inequalities across Europe in accessing those clinical trials. Not being able to cross border when there is a trial open in another country, but as you can see on this map, showing from 2010 to 2022 that were 446 clinical trials running for children and adolescents with cancer. You show the number of these trials open in each of the different countries. And no need to make a long story, it's obvious about the inequalities across Europe. So A, research can benefit to children. And if we made progress up to now, 80% high-income country survival, it's because we integrated research in our care. Second, there are inequalities across Europe in accessing the clinical trial. And this is true for academic trial and industry trial. And third, we absolutely need to have this cross-border initiative supporting access to early innovation in order to be sure that all children and adolescents will have access to what they need. That's it.
Thank you very much, Gilles, for pointing out this so strongly. And I only can support all the previous set of, also from the experience of running an academic trial in neuroblastoma, where we have demonstrated through immunotherapy you can increase survival by 20%. And you get even an approval for the drug by the EMA. And then all of a sudden, you're confronted with a member state that evaluates the QALYs. Is it worth that a child gets the treatment, and is 20% enough to save a child, as evidence? And this is cruel on patients and their families when there's such an opportunity and you're turned down by the funding opportunity. And that was part of NICE program discussion in Great Britain, and it was turned around by patient advocates. So this has to be underpinned very strongly. So I think there's really multiple work to be done to shift the barriers towards the better and to improve towards better access to innovation. Having said this, I would now like to invite Annika Novak. Give us your views on the potential, what the European Commission, DG, RTD, can do for us to improve these currently existing barriers.
Yes, thank you. And I think I have a bit of a difficult job now. Because, I mean, there's a mix of research, investment, more clinical trials across Europe, and ensuring or increasing, improving the access throughout. Maybe just to recap with the EU Cancer Mission, it's still fairly new, although launched 3.5 years ago, and have already invested quite some budget into research. It's still in the early beginnings. But what is important to note is not just about research and innovation. It goes beyond, and it's really about what we say, forging a new path for young cancer survivors and for young cancer patients. I will highlight a few areas where we try to, change the situation, coming from the research side, but really making the connection with healthcare. So first, it's obviously still about boosting the research, and so far, 4 work programs. We have invested about almost 500 million, whereas in Europe research, 95% really on research, and the strong focus being on rare refractory cancers and pediatric cancers. And almost 1/3 goes into research to use cancer, from treatment also to addressing issues of quality of life. The most recent topic in the last work program is addressing late effects of cancer treatments. We're trying to search the complementarity within Horizon Europe, with EU for Health program. We're also trying out new kind of funding opportunities, uniting charities that they would, then finance research. So the mission is also about, putting stakeholders together, mobilizing stakeholders in view of the common goal of the mission, which is, improving the lives of more than 3 million people by 2030. So we still have a bit to go, but we see some first results. I mean, boosting cancer research, one side. Second is, and I think that was already alluded in the first panel, is enhancing also the capacities in doing research. Capacities, we're focusing on the comprehensive cancer centers or initiative infrastructures, which, on one side are receive now a lot of attention and support through the EU for Health program under the cancer plan. We come in, we really look into the research capacities by offering, capacity building programs really tailored to those countries in most need where there is no CCI. So to enhance that with a view also to increase, obviously, then the capacities for doing clinical trials. We also have what we say policy dialogues. That's again something just to, help well, it's not just the researchers, the providers. All the stakeholders that are important to engage them in these countries, to increase the knowledge, to support also the training and qualification. Third point is the innovation of governance models. So I don't want to go into it so much because it always sounds a bit boring, but what we have created 4 years ago together with the colleagues from DG Santé working on the cancer plan, we put together health and research ministries, what we call in an expert group. It's really with the aim of what we learn from research could be hopefully quicker translated into healthcare, which obviously then also hopefully, it is about, your entitlements that, new treatments, innovative treatments find a way that they are being reimbursed. And hopefully, but that's not addressed, the question of the cross-border care. The same is now doing replicated, supported through the mission that also at national level, we call it the National Cancer Mission Hubs, that we also engage more stakeholders at the national and regional level. And then final point, and I think this is also important, to engage the citizens in research, so what we call the citizens engagement. We focused or launched this activity of the mission on young cancer survivors, first to understand their needs, to engage them in activities, but it really had helped also to shape topics, to capture what are their needs, what can we do with the research funding we have at Euro level, which, obviously is also limited. We also had this year a bus road show, which is about cancer awareness, but also involving, citizens more in research and see the value what research can bring. Research funded at EU level, but should reach the citizens in the member states. So it's all kind of elements which come together, but always with a view, and that's one of the priorities, how we can improve the access to innovation, to treatments. It's more about the engagement. It's not about that we change a legislation, but to launch this discussion and always make the link what we have available in terms of evidence or what would come out from clinical trials, finds its quicker way into the clinical practice and reach the patients. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for elucidating the opportunities that you have in your hands. And with this, I give the word to MEP Tomislav Sokol. You are a very strong supporter of the cross-border health directive revision. And I would ask you quite directly, what are your insights? How can we move barriers? How would you introduce change that we have better opportunities to satisfy these high unmet medical needs that we have in this scenario?
Thank you very much. So the crucial thing is, the representatives of the Commission now obviously do not have the political mandate to make promises on the changes of legislation because such political decisions has not been made. That's obviously the case. But I can tell you that this is something which is my personal priority, and I'm the coordinator of the biggest political group in the Parliament in the Health Committee. I know I have the support of the Renew coordinator, Mr. Voiculescu, who is there. So we need to change several things. So very concretely, we have to put the pressure on the Commission, because the Commission is the one who proposes legislation. We in the Parliament cannot propose legislation, but we can put political pressure on the Commission to come up with it. So what is the state of play? So first, it's not just about cross-border directive, because the case that was described was not about cross-border directive, it was about social security coordination, because it was S2, it was the S2 form. So and that's one of the problems. So we have two pieces of legislation: social security coordination, Regulation 883/2004, and Directive 2011/24. So they are similar, but not quite the same. So under the coordination regulation, you can access treatment only with providers who are part of the public system. You do not have to pay out of pocket, but apart from the co-payment, which is paid by the patients in the state of treatment, and you are, according to coordination regulation, treated as if you were insured in the state of treatment, the same as patients there. Under the directive, you can also access private providers who are not part of the public system, but you have to pay out of your own pocket and then ask for reimbursement under the tariffs of your own state in which you are insured. So these are differences. But one thing is the same in both, and that's the problem. And the problem is that you can only access treatments which are, if you cannot get adequate treatment in your country, but only those treatments which are part of what is covered in your country, and that excludes experimental treatments. And so that's the main problem. Why is that the case? Because when member states did not want to accept that they have to pay for experimental treatments for financial reasons. Because you know that in a legislative process, it's the council, so without agreement in the council, you cannot get things adopted. And when the directive was being adopted in 2011, but also the latest version of the regulation, of coordination regulation in 2004, member states wouldn't hear of it that they pay for experimental treatments. So that is the current state of play. But in this concrete case, I think the situation is a bit more complicated, because the European Court of Justice said 25 years ago, if a treatment is experimental in one country, but is already standard in another country, then you have to look at the European Union as a whole. Which means that essentially, according to this judgment, this was a Dutch case, a Perboom's case, that if a treatment has been recognized in one country, has become standard, then you should be entitled to go into that country to receive treatment. So this is what court said 25 years ago. So when it was interpreting the treaty provisions of free movement of services, which were later codified in the directive. I don't know the facts of the case, but according to this judgment, if it is recognized somewhere in Europe already as a standard, then you should be able to access it there. Of course, as I said, I don't know the details of the case, but there's a situation. So what we can do? So one thing is legislation, the other thing is funding. With legislation, obviously, we have to provide the right to access clinical trials as a specific case. To provide clinical trials as a specific case, which under certain conditions patients could access and be treated by their health insurance. Of course, we will have to prescribe some conditions, etc., etc. So that's one possibility. We already did some political statements like this in the Becker report of the Special Committee on Beating Cancer that I was a part of. We have, I think, in paragraph 62, explicit provision that patients who want that there needs to be possibility to access clinical trials for patients suffering from cancer. So we already have this political statement on the level of the Parliament, but now we have to put the pressure on the Commission to change the legislation. So to provide for a possibility that also clinical trials can be accessed. Because if this is not explicitly prescribed, then member states will always interpret this in a narrow way, that if it is a clinical trial, it means that the treatment is experimental and they will not cover it. So definitely change of legislation is needed. The second thing, obviously, is the financial aspect, because if we don't provide some kind of financial incentives for the member states, they will never accept this in the Council. So this is why we will propose, and I think I have my friend and colleague Voiculescu on board, to have some kind of a common European funding for these kinds of cases. Whether it's an equalization fund in a way that those countries who have more outgoing patients than incoming patients, so have to pay more for patients who are treated abroad than for patients who are treated at home, either to cover this difference or to have a special dedicated fund in specific cases of accessing clinical trials. So these are the things that we'll be working on. So because if we do not provide some kind of European financial help, European financial stimulation for the member states, they will never accept this, that they cover such cases. To accept that the legislation is changed in a way that the patients give right to access clinical trials. So these are the two things that we have to do. So to put pressure on the Commission to change the legislation, to provide the right to access clinical trials in certain cases, but also to provide some kind of European financial help so that member states do not block this when it gets to the Council. I know that currently it's not very high on the list of policy priorities of the Commission, to be perfectly honest, but I can tell you that we in the Parliament will continue to put very strong pressure on the Commission to come up with concrete legislative revision, and we'll also, when we work on the next 7-year budget, we'll also do whatever we can that we provide some dedicated funding for cross-border care. So we have to work from both of these sides, but I can promise you that I will personally, with my colleagues, that I will work in that direction. Thanks.
So thank you very much for your commitment here to drive the topics towards the better. And I think it's complex. We are very much aware of it. And I think for us, it's so close to the heart that academic research and clinical trials get the value that they deserve, because as most know in the room, the success story of childhood cancer is an academic research success story over more than half a century.
Maybe just one additional thing. I like to be very concrete. So one of the big problems that was mentioned in the presentation is this inequality in terms of possibility to access clinical trials. So since now we are in the process of adopting several legislation on the pharmaceuticals, so pharmaceutical legislation, now we are waiting for the Critical Medicines Act and Biotech Act. I think that definitely we should also try to think of giving incentives for the pharmaceutical companies, maybe additional 6 months or 1 year of market exclusivity or something like that, for clinical trials which cover multiple member states, especially those where we have a lack of these clinical trials. Because we can solve some of the problems with cross-border access, but we have to work on extending clinical trials to other countries, not just France, Germany, the big states. I come from Croatia. You saw us on the map. We were very, very light blue, which means that we have a very small number of clinical trials. So also incentivizing the industry to extend clinical trials to cover other member states, not just always the same ones, also smaller countries, also countries in Eastern Europe where we have the biggest problem. I think this is also something that we can work on in the European Parliament through the legislation as well.
Thank you very much for the additional clarifications. And now I would like to invite MEP Nicolas Cesares to bring his insights to this table here. I think we are very interested in this scenario of hospital exemptions. I think you have also the perfect background to speak on these topics, because truly we had a story today from a parent in our room talking about the CAR T cells in rooms, so an ATMP, which is exactly this scenario that in one country innovation ATMP is actually a very innovative and very promising approach, and how actually to advance on the European scale such working together in the academic setting, and not necessarily have it exclusively with industry only. So please give us your insights into these scenarios. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this very important event, and also thank you to Childhood Cancer for this invitation. It was said previously, it was mentioned by Mr. Sokol, that while families in some regions have cutting access to clinical trials and experimental therapies, others face many barriers in other geographical locations in our continent. It was mentioned also, it was one of the outcomes of the BECA report. And I think that it's very important now we have a SAN committee, a dedicated, an exclusive committee for health in this parliament, a legislative committee, and we had to take advantage of this new scenario when it comes to this important fight of getting new treatments and break barriers that we have in Europe in order to have equal access to the different treatments. I think you mentioned a very important point, the importance of the hospital exemption when it comes to the access of new treatments. I have defended the necessity to maintain clear rules that allow member states to develop a framework in hospital exemption when it comes to CAR-Ts, for example, that I think is a very important technology also in childhood cancer. I think that childhood cancer requires also a fast access to innovation and to the new research and development. I think that we need also to fight against misinformation when it comes to these new therapies, that I think is very important. Don't let misinformation and the spreading agents playing games with the health of the childhood, because it's already happening and we have to fight against that. Because sometimes people understand that these clinical trials and this clinical research provide citizens, provide families the possibility to access of clinical research and new possibility of treatments, is also make experiments with the childhood, and this is not true. So we have to fight against this misinformation that is already happening in some parts of Europe. You can see also how vaccines, the misinformation around vaccines, and how vaccines can save also lives of the future adults with new treatments or the new rollout of vaccines when it comes to cancer. So I think it's important to mention that. Regarding the access for these clinical trials and experimental therapies, I think that is the moment to ensure also in the directive that children with cancer can travel freely to receive the best available treatment. It was mentioned also by my colleague Sokol. And of course, mandate reimbursement for cross-border participants in clinical trials, preventing also financial barriers that can determine a child's survival. I think it's very important to highlight this. We had to open the borders also for price and reimbursement. And of course, harmonize regulatory frameworks across member states to streamline access to cutting-edge treatments, reducing delays that can be cause for bureaucracy, mainly for administration and so on. I cannot forget when it comes to the political debate and when it comes to the legislation that we are already working and negotiating in the European institutions. We cannot forget the pharma legislation. We are dealing right now with the final steps in the pharma legislation. The Parliament has already a position that was voted in the previous term. Now we are waiting for the European Council to have a clear position on that and start to negotiate in trilogues. But it's true that we can link the innovation with better access to clinical trials and to experimental therapies. And I have defended this in the previous term with amendments saying that we can extend the intellectual protection, the IP, for farmers if they have a compromise making research and innovation in Europe. And I think it's important to highlight this because I have defended that, but there are other groups that voted against this amendment. I think this possibility can be again on the table on the negotiations in the final trilogue if the member states wanted to do so. And for me, it was a pleasure to listen here recently, the previous speaker, that some groups that were against in the previous term of this possibility can be in favor in this term. So I think it's good news for all if from this Parliament we all compromise in this idea of benefiting patients with these clinical trials, linking this, giving more IP to the industry, not give all to the industry with no trade for patients. We need to take advantage of these benefits that we give to the industry for all the people, and mainly for the childhood cancer, that I think this is, I cannot see any kind of disease that requires more attention than childhood cancer. And today is the Cancer Day, the Fight Against Cancer Day. So I think that it's time to work on that, and I think that we also had to take a look on the best practice that we have in Europe. It was also highlighted in the Becker report. There are some countries that are taking advantage of the clinical trials and are making more clinical trials than others. This best practice that are already happening in some countries, we had to make that these ideas goes from one country to another and give access to these clinical trials for all the people in Europe. I have more ideas, but I think the time is limited. I want to stop here, and if you have questions later, I can answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We have a quick comment.
Thank you very much, because I'll have to leave. So just one thing. So we were working on the same package, but on two different pieces of legislation. So colleague was working on the directive. I was working on the regulation, and on the regulation, when I'm the negotiator of the EPP, I was also supporting and actually proposing to tie part of the incentives for conducting research in Europe, and I will continue to support that. While the final agreement did not include that, that wasn't the best possible solution, I think. But I think we will be able to improve on this during the trialogue, and I will definitely support every incentive, every motivation, every additional benefit which motivates companies to do research in Europe. So I can promise you that.
Tomislav, just before you leave, one additional information. Since you are talking about EU funds, we don't ask to fund research in another country. The cost of a clinical trial, the collection of data, the database and so on, is covered by the sponsor, even the academic sponsors. What we estimate for a given patient in a given hospital participating to a given trial is what, in addition to standard of care, is being done because the child is participating to trial. Additional MRI, additional blood sample, and so on.
Travel costs,
and in addition the travel costs, which means that we consider in academic trial that the standard of care of the patient of this hospital should be paid by the hospital. And what is paid in addition, the additional MRI and so on, is on the shoulder of the sponsor. Which means that for the S2, we wouldn't just ask to cover the cost of standard of care in another country, plus the travel. And this is important, because I think people think when it is experimental, we ask for paying everything. Because clearly the hospital receiving a patient from another country cannot pay on its budget the cost of standard of care. Yeah, which means that clearly the cost is not millions per trials. And I think it's important, which is it's not completely deviating with the concept of the S2, which is access to standard of care.
I agree. So this is something that we need to explain to the member states, yes, and give them some kind of financial projection, because it's the member states who are usually the biggest opposition. Absolutely. And since the Commission knows that, the Commission does not want to engage this because they're afraid that the Council will block it. What happened in many previous cases. But I agree. I think this is a very important argument that these costs are not that high as some would think from the start. Yeah.
So because we are eating up already our closing remarks.
Hopefully
very brief comments.
Yes, a very brief comment. I just want to bring to your attention that I think we talk about two different things of clinical trials. So I am leading a clinical trial group on Ewing sarcoma, ultra-rare bone cancer. I have opened this trial in a lot of European countries, but I failed to open it in Slovenia, Slovakia, Romania, and so on. And why? Because they don't have the money to open the trial. And we don't use fancy, innovative drugs. But we have our protocol, and we have shown in the past years that the survival of patients with Ewing sarcoma without CAR T cells and blah, 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 without some new drugs, constantly improved just because the children were treated according to a standard protocol, and the physicians can come back to me and ask for whatever. But we are not able to open these kinds of trials in a lot of countries because there is no national or whatever support for the clinics there to open these trials. And this is not a pharma trial. This is a purely academic trial. And the history of childhood cancer making such a progress in survival in all of our countries is not because of these phase 1-2 trials driven by pharma, maybe also, but it's more or less because of our academic trials. And what we need in a lot of countries is really some financial support to enable to embrace also these countries and open the clinical trials. And this is, I think, what Nicole Scobie also mentioned in her talk. So, and I just wanted to make clear that we are really talking about two things, but both are innovative and research and help survive.
Last word to a patient advocate.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to underline, and thank you so much for clarifying the S2 topic, Gilles. You know, in Belgium, for instance, you can apply for S2 for clinical trials. So it is allowed, but 99% of the cases, the Belgian Social Security will deny the S2 clinical trial, because they will consider that many interventions that are requested for funding by the Belgian security do not fall into standard of care. So the problem that we have in Belgium is that the interpretation of standard of care when a patient travels for a clinical trial is extremely restricted. And so there's really also a need of clarification of what, when patients travel for a clinical trial, what can be included in the standard of care. Given a
ask the question for so-called S2 outside of clinical trial.
Yes, no, they wouldn't ask the question for S2 outside of a clinical trial.
Saying that transferring a child from Belgium to France with a brain tumor to participate to a clinical trial would ask the S2 to pay the cost, or what would the child would cost if he would come there to receive the standard treatment.
I fully agree with you, but that's something that...
We need to convince people.
Yes.
Because they are afraid that we will ask them to pay for running trial or even industry trial.
But that's where guidelines would really help to bring clarification, I think.
This, I close the second panel and make room for the closing remarks. And I invite MEP Andreas Kulja now to come to the panel, Uta Dirksen and Anita. Thank you very much.
think. So, thank you very much for being here. And I think it's a very, very important topic, what we discussed, what we are discussing now. And, oh, sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah, it's better? I can use both of them, but, but I'm not sure that that's the best. Maybe like this. So, thank you very much for being here, and I think we just discussed a very, very important topic and the challenges we face. One message is clear, that the fight against childhood cancer must be fought together across countries, across sectors, across political parties. I'm a medical doctor, and when I finished my medical studies, I was sure that I wanted to work with adults because I couldn't be able to bear the suffering of children. I think the children are the most vulnerable human beings. I'm a father. My son just turned 1 a few days ago, and listening to you and hearing these stories, what you shared, and the challenges. Honestly, can say that the childhood cancers are one of the most terrible diseases, because children are not responsible for being ill. It's not because they have bad habits or unhealthy lifestyle, but because different factors, what they cannot control, or they are not responsible for those. And if when they are affected by a childhood cancer, the cancer takes away their life. But if there is a cure, and it's accessible, and they can be cured, still the cancer take their big part of their childhood, takes away the joy, the happiness, actually a part of their life. And the childhood cancers they know no borders. Neither our efforts should have to fight it. As yesterday we had a discussion during the establishment of intergroup on cancer and rare diseases, and I've just heard that the disparities are very real in the European Union. That the survival rates differ by 20%, as you just mentioned yesterday, and I immediately take a note. It can differ by 20% between eastern part and western part of Europe, and I think it's not acceptable, because children are children everywhere, and we live in the European Union, and we have the innovative technologies. We are one of the most advanced part of the whole world, and we still see these disparities, this lack of access to innovative treatments, and we discussed today the barriers, the limitation of the cross-border healthcare directive, the challenging of financing innovative treatments, the obstacles to participate in clinical trials, even when there are very advanced clinical trials at universities, or if there are clinical trials in private sector. But also very important that we heard solutions. And I think it's very important that we have these events where we can discuss our concerns or our opinion and possible solutions. How can we strengthen the research networks across Europe? How can we invest more in cross-border collaboration? How can we work together with Commission and fight together for our common goal? Sorry, it's really hard to talk about this topic. Usually I talk easier, but as a doctor, when you talk about these topics, you just remember those cases, those faces which you saw during the medical school in children's hospitals, in different departments, and when your colleagues, mentors told you that yes, we have this kid, but there is no cure, and he has only few weeks or months to live, and we still struggling in the same situation and talking how to solve the problems, but we have to move forward and do something, and I think it's very important that now we have the Sant as a standing committee, because it was a part of the environmental committee, and it is very important to have a Sant, because now we have more power, we have the legislative power, we have coordinators like Vlad or Tomislav or Mr. Andrukaitis, and together we can be more loud, we can be more strong, and we can really move forward. I believe that we can move forward. We cannot change the world in 5 years during the mandate, but maybe we can move forward just a little bit things to make our world better. And one more thing, but I know that we are running out of time, that when we are talking about childhood cancers and diseases which affect the children, we have to ensure not only the treatment, the access to the treatment, the financial part, but also how can we make the whole process more child-friendly, because it's a real trauma to the children go through the chemotherapy or surgery, or even to be in another hospital far away from their home. And we also have to find a solution for this, to be more human, to make the whole process more human, because the cancer really affects the whole life of the kid, even if we can treat the children who are affected. So I really hope that we can move today's discussion into real actions, and that we can work together to make childhood cancer survival a universal right, not only a privilege of few. And I would like to thank you all and to those who helped to make this event a reality. I would like to thank SIOP for the great support, and a special thank to the experts and speakers who share their personal story, their experiences, because that's how we can learn. And I think as an MEP is one of our biggest duty to learn to see the bigger picture. How can we solve a problem, not creating two other new problems, to see the bigger picture. And I know it's not easy to find solutions, but I really believe and I hope that together we can find solutions. So thank you very much for being here, sharing your stories, your knowledge, and let's work together and move our world in a better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this quote and statement, and we are very much looking forward to work with you together in the next few years. And before I kind of sum up what I thought was very, kind of could be very helpful, I would like to invite you to our conference of the SIOP Europe group, which is from the 12th to 19th May in Budapest.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then you could, if you have time, you could meet some of us and see how we work together. And from what was said, I thought what really could make a change is really to also see this economic chance. If we see across the Atlantic, maybe Europe could take the lead now. There is a chance. And to work together with pharma that kind of work on rare disease. And I'm a pediatrician, and all childhood cancer is rare disease, but to be honest, also lung cancers with this molecular diagnosis and so on, each cancer becomes kind of rare because you all has these subtypes. So I think there's really a chance. And then I think it's really very important to empower the ERNs, also on the national level, because this could also help stories like not having access to a trial with CAR T cells. From my institution, we have sent 3 children to there from Germany, so it was also easy to do. And with the ERNs, we have a network of experts, and if they say, okay, we would recommend this, then you have kind of the highest level of expert opinion in the countries. And maybe if the national insurances or the other insurance could accept this, if we could lobby for this, that this might be helpful in those cases. And also to have ERNs reimbursed, not only via EU funding, but really as an institution on the national levels. I think this would be also very helpful. And as I said before, to facilitate, to enable all countries to open clinical trials. And this is not the pharma trials because they pay everything, but it's more these big academic trials. This is our families, disease families, where we really would like to embrace all European countries. And with this, I would like to thank everybody and go to Anita.
I want to make it very short, but nevertheless, first of all, I want to thank the authorities, DG Santé and DG Research, because without you, we wouldn't be there. We know the weaknesses from the member states. We know where we came and what we achieved together in the EU, with the EU authorities to come here. So there's a long way to go, but we have to be also positive. And thank you, Annika and Hannah yes, thank you. But also listening to the politicians today and the MEPs that were here, I'm very inspired and positive. Vlad and Tomislav is not here anymore, and the colleague from Spain is not here. But seeing you also supporting us in this regard, and not despite where your political family is with you, in the EU, we never have the feeling you are here for the public and the patients. And this is what we can see and what we can feel, and inspires us to go back and being strong on a national level. Because as you all know, this is not that easy. There's sometimes yeah, they more discuss on other levels and have different interests. So also saying this is very important. But thank you also for the patient advocates here. Delphine, Nicole, Barbara, thank you for sharing with us. I hope everything goes well with your child. And yeah, I want to also take the opportunity to thank the healthcare professions. This is not, we are not doing this enough. Also, we are one. We really do this all together. And yeah, I wish you all, all of us, that we go in this direction. What you said. Thanks for hosting us. It's the first time that you are the host in this regard, so we will hope to see you again, and we have this opportunity to be here again. And I wish you all a nice evening. Thank you very much.